And we're live. Welcome
Nice.
back to the ABP Weekly. Hey Chris, how are you doing?
Good. I was reading in one of the Google books that I forgot to tell you this, that for Google to index this well for us or something, we need, because it's transcribing what we talk about, in the beginning we need to say like, this is the App Business Weekly from the App Business Podcast, or something like that. So Chris Chigi, David Fowler. Okay, now we're like set, but
Yeah,
um,
and some robotic, recognizable voice, of course. Yeah,
right, right.
we'll get better at that.
So
So,
our stats are kind of messed up, so we don't know how the episode did where we published the ABP Weekly last week on the podcast feed, but we thought that was a cool thing to do just because it definitely has a different feel to how we talk to each other. And there's people, like there's listeners that are joining us live. Well, there's only a couple now. Kevin's here, but the last 2 weeks there's been tons of questions and all that kind of stuff. So we figured
yep.
this was good to put on the podcast feed. We don't know if anyone likes it yet because we don't see stats and no one's really mentioned it. So we'll just keep. This is Friday. It's 9 a.m. my time in Bogota. That's Central Time in U.S. And so it'll be on the podcast feed tomorrow. It's like super relevant, like time. What is it? There's like little delay or whatever
hmm
in our conversation and when it goes live. And you'll be able to tell because we'll be talking about, hey, this is what happened this week, and the podcast was cool, but we recorded that 2 weeks ago, and here's what we recorded for next week, this week, and all that kind of stuff. So if you're not joining us on these broadcasts and you're enjoying it on the podcast, we'd love to hear what your feedback is because, again, we're just experimenting with a ton of stuff and, seeing what resonates with people.
Yeah, so again, if you want to watch live, abpweekly.com, and you can always come there and ask questions while we're live here. So it's kind of the main thing here on the weekly, other than reviewing the week, looking back on the week, and just reflecting on what has been big for the community, for us, etc.
Yeah.
So what has been big, Chris? What do you think is the mention-worthy topics?
So we usually record the podcast on Thursday, and then Thursday night I'll go and reflect on the week a little bit to write a short newsletter. And even the newsletter is brand new. Like,
Yep.
that's I think the third one. Yeah, in fact, it was the third one last night. And last week I forgot. I'm like, oh, it's Friday afternoon. I forgot the newsletter, right? So it's definitely not a routine yet for us, but it is a good way to like. Again, this whole thing that David and I are doing is super helpful to us. If no one were listening, it just happens that people are listening and sharing their stuff. But so reflecting on the week in the newsletter, obviously the Amazon phone was a big one,
hmm
and that will be out next Wednesday, and we have an episode coming out next Wednesday about that. It feels like a totally so much slower week after the last 2 weeks where we had Worldwide Developers Conference, and then we had Apple kind of changing how they viewed their own rules on incentivized ads. So this week feels slower, but then at the same time, Amazon announced the phone. No big deal. So it's crazy how much goes on in this industry, and I'm just so glad I picked this a couple years ago because this is exactly what my brain was craving. I wanted something that changed a lot, that was growing, that if you stayed on top of it, you could keep learning and keep growing and keep taking, there's an opportunity to do something big every couple of weeks, like big every couple of weeks,
Yep.
where you could create a business or service and own a section of this mobile app market. And yeah, it's just really, really fun to be a part of. And now our listeners are getting more and more involved, and like they're becoming like social friends, like, or what's it called, social media friends or something. Like we're the same people we're having conversations with, and I'm really interested to see how some of the people that are brand new grow, because I know a year later you look back and you're like, holy smokes, that was me asking about this question, and now I'm like giving, not me personally, but like I'm thinking of, I think her name's Kaylee. Kaylee, if you're listening, hi. She was saying, oh, I'm new and I'm trying to bootstrap it and all this kind of stuff, and if she really does all the reading and does all the, really goes for it and has the patience and I guess some of the finances to make it through some of the lessons, yeah, you'll be surprised at where you're at in 6 months and a year. Remember, I mean, I'm only 2.5 years into this, right? I have a huge corporate background, which helps for sure. But as far as mobile stuff and internet marketing and blogs and YouTube and all this stuff, this is all, well, this is all new to me 2.5 years, and I feel like I've come like super long way. So, yeah, it's fun kind of seeing who's listening and watching them grow, and hopefully they'll continue to share and stick with us and stick with this opportunity.
What I think was also quite interesting was the whole discussion around the incentivized adverts and incentivized videos and stuff like that, where Apple seems to be rejecting and then not rejecting apps that are using this. And the really great thing about this community and people want to share, not just us doing the podcast, but the community around the podcast, is that we did this interview with the guys at Vungle, and they were very open, very generous to share what their opinion is and what they think the data shows to them. And so basically they think that this was a test and Apple is pulling back on that. And yeah, pretty much immediately after we released this episode, we get a response from Oriel of AppsFire, who said he had a maybe dissenting opinion on that. And that's what I think is just really great about the podcast, is that we can explore those different opinions on what the facts seem to show us. And we definitely learned something from that interview, which will be airing, I think, next week. And so we'll have both of those opinions, which we kind of agree with. I think both of them we kind of agree with, and then we take maybe the best arguments from both sides and make up our minds with that. But it was definitely good to see that people are sharing, and they are even sharing despite other people having a different opinion than them, which I think is great and very helpful for the community.
Yeah, the Oriole one was super flattering because, well, the Vungle one was flattering too, because the way it came about, which was a total departure from how David and I normally do podcasts. Like, I don't know, I didn't tell you this, David, but I had walked in, so like an idiot, I tried to go grocery shopping before, like, oh, we got 2.5 hours, no problem. And so I sold my car to move to Bogota because it's hard to have a car in Bogota. So we're trying to get a cab coming back from the grocery store. Like, it's what we call big grocery shopping. Like once a month we'll go get stuff that isn't at the local like tienda. And we sat there for 15 minutes trying to get a cab, and I was just going crazy. Like, I'm not built for the city. Like, even if you had a car, it would be a problem because there's so much traffic. And I'm looking forward to New Zealand, right? Bogota's been great, but I'm looking forward to a slower pace of life. And so I walk in, like, running. The cab dropped us off at the corner because the traffic was so bad. So I'm running up the street with groceries in my hand, running inside, get here like 2 minutes before we start recording with Vungle, right? And I'm thinking, this is a situation where I emailed the CEO at Vungle and said, hey, we'd love to hear your opinion if you'd like to come on the show. And he forwarded me to the VP of Marketing. She got the VP of Sales, and 3 hours later, we're doing a podcast. Like, that's how fast it went. So you got to, like, if they're going to be that flexible and ready, then you got to be ready to help them, right? Or let them, you got to be there. You can't be late to that call. And so I was so distracted. I messed up Andrea's name 20 times. It was a little bit of a departure from a standard interview to, like, breaking news style conversation. And man, it was just, I listened to it again, and David, you were fine. It was not my best podcast, right? But the point is it's not about us necessarily. It's about the fact that if we do this right with the podcast, we have a platform to, unless you're on a mailing list for Vungle, or unless those two VPs decide to post something on YouTube or on Facebook or another email in addition to their CEO, which I think corporate politics doesn't allow for, we're the people that can bring that kind of information to indie dev and shed light. And I say indie dev, but I don't know that that's the audience. It's just, I mean, it could be someone at Supercell listening to the show, right, that maybe wants to go start his own thing, right? So it's not just people who are indie devs, but certainly people who are starting their own businesses and running their own businesses. So to have Vungle be there and ready to go, and then to right afterwards have Oriole say, hey, I listened to your show, I listened to the Vungle show, and I want to be on. It's like, holy smokes, all of a sudden we have this like really cool platform where else are you going to hear Oriole unless he sends a blog post and you follow Oriole, da. So I think we kind of have this position where we can be this curation of what's super interesting and super relevant to our people, which are indie devs, publishers, developers, and I think we have the ability to get them on the show, which is like a newfound, like a light turned on kind of that analogy where, oh, people want to be on the show and talk to indie dev. What's that?
Yeah, we can do that now. It's like new game superpower. Yeah.
It feels like, oh, we play a role now where we're very involved in indie dev in our respective roles, and we know what is relevant to us, and we can bring those people on. Like, I made a note yesterday when we were talking about Amazon, hey, we should have an Amazon Fire Phone person come on. Like, why not? Like, talk about the publisher community and talk about what your store is like. And, I mean, all of a sudden, I think it clicked like, hey, we don't just have to find guests that are good publishers or, I mean, I've been thrilled with the guests we've had, especially the ones coming up for this next week. Like, I think this next week, I mean, we have a guy that we talked about last week, but you know, super real big entrepreneur stud man talked to us for almost an hour, and he was like, "Dude, let's just keep going." And he said that after we were done. But yeah, so this is like resonating with people, and talking is really easy and all that kind of stuff. But it definitely changes how I think about it.
It's kind of the point of the podcast, really. We have been saying that even if we didn't have any listeners, it would be great for us, all the learning we do on the podcast. Well, but this kind of goes beyond that, because if we didn't have any listeners, you know, there wouldn't be any incentive for those kind of people to come on the podcast. And as you said, you know, if we don't reach out to them, or they don't reach out to us because of the podcast, they probably would never speak out. They probably would never publish something, and if they did, it was in some you know, other on their company blog or some location where you probably wouldn't look. So I think that's a whole new level of value that we can personally get out of the podcast, and hopefully also get that for the listeners, because in that very regard with the Apple rejection, that's just not something that we can be experts in, because we only have our own very small sample size of apps that we can submit and that we can talk about. And we cannot, you know, really talk about it in a qualified way, whereas these people who run advertising networks can totally give you an opinion that's at least based on some stats that they're seeing.
So across from all their big partners and all that kind of stuff.
So those are really experts on that, which we could never reach out to without the podcast, and which probably wouldn't reach out to their community in any other way if the podcast wasn't there. So I'm so grateful for that. And, you know, thanks to the listeners who are so faithful to the podcast, we can get these people on.
Yeah, speaking of which, tell your friends, if you guys have friends in indie dev, or post it on a Facebook group, because it really makes a difference in who we can get as guests. Like when we tell them, hey, we have 5,000 downloads yesterday, you know, and we think that's about 2,000 to 3,000 indie dev publisher listeners in a broad range of, how do I say, like, experience. That resonates. Like, people are like, oh, okay, I want to be on, you know. So, I mean, a lot of this sounds like David and I are patting ourselves on the back. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to say, first, we're kind of saying thank you, because your guys' feedback and listening to us, and, like, us having big numbers is helping find more people to be on the podcast, but then also it's starting to click with us where it's like, oh, we can really provide a valuable service here. And I mentioned this in the newsletter. David and I kind of decided we're over advertisers. Like, we're not going to, if we have something that David and I are working on and we're excited about, we'll advertise our own stuff. But we reached out to like 30 people to advertise, and it's just like people were missing meetings, and it's just a huge distraction. And I think we both decided, screw it. We don't, I think it costs us, what, like $30 to edit this thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not,
you know, who cares?
It's not super expensive, though, you know, it's not free to publish a podcast. but it's not super expensive. And at the same time, I'm really kind of happy that we didn't find any advertisers quickly, because it gave us the chance to reflect on whether that would be even the right approach if going forward for the podcast. And I think it now gives us the opportunity to freely and openly speak about services that we like without being sponsored. And also, we can talk about maybe some opportunities where we can come up with something that the community might want or might need. So
yeah, they say that they say that the way to make money on a podcast is to build products for your listeners and sell those products. So
yeah,
I mean,
and we'll see if that even works out. I mean, it doesn't. For me, there's no need that will happen. I mean, if the podcast just keeps going like this, I'm absolutely happy with that, because
me too.
There's so much getting so much out of it, just because of the guests and what I just said. So talking about sharing this, first, of course, share this with your friends, but then also let us know which new cool guests you would like to see on the show. Because when you all share the podcast and we have even more great listeners, then we can get more guests on, or high-level guests on, or whatever it is. And we just need to know who you want to see on the show. So, suggestions welcome.
All right. So my dream guest is Mark Cuban. Okay, I just want to get that out there. And he's involved. He's got an app. He's got he invested in Apptopia, I think. So.
Well, you got a man crush on him, I guess.
I totally do. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me make an announcement. Yeah, let me make an announcement about the App Business MBA. So we're talking about how we're not taking advertisers, but it's not totally genuine. Well, it is genuine, but it's because part of the reason is because, look, I've got a product that I'm really excited about, and I think a lot of these things I'm scratching my own itch. And this example is something, man, if they had this 2 years ago when I was starting, it would have been a no-brainer. The things that were around 2 years ago were either like this App Empire thing where you pay to watch some videos, and it was kind of, I had already figured out what they had shown, right? It was like $500, and some of my friends had purchased that. In fact, I know some of the listeners purchased like Carter Thomas's one where you pay $500 and learn some basic reskinning stuff. But that's not what I was looking for. I want, I'm a business guy. I've got 10 years in corporate America, like running real businesses, not just like a sales guy, but like, I manage multi-million-dollar product lines. And I wanted content for me, and I know there's other people out there like me or that want to get to the same level, right? You want a bookkeeper, and you want to learn how to scale your business. You want to know how to hire and fire. You want to know all these kinds of things. Besides for just, hey, you buy some code and then you hire someone to redesign it and you flip it, I think Game Academy by Trey Smith is a real offering. I don't know if he offers all the business stuff, but at least the game machine is legit from what I can tell. It's just not my thing. But so and that's $10,000. So I think there's a real gap in the market for real information. Like if you run a marketing agency or a website, like build websites for companies or manage their websites, and your clients are asking about mobile, and you want to build a mobile practice, and right now you think you know mobile, but really you build one app a quarter, and you're just not. You can get a mobile app out there, but you're not using best practices. It's a no-brainer for an agency. This is like the idea is to drastically flatten the learning curve, or like escalate the time. Like instead of it taking a year to get to this point, do it in 2 months, right? That's the idea, and save you a ton of money trying to figure it out. So that's the idea behind the App Business MBA. David and I joined something called Podcast Paradise for podcasters, and it was, I think, $1,200, and it basically said, hey, do this, this is how you avoid this, and we already had the podcast going. This was like at episode 15 we decided to join this, and it was a bargain. I don't want to spend 6 months experimenting with stuff. Just tell me what's working for you, and then I can evaluate it from there. And that's the idea behind the App Business MBA is you can see what I've been doing. You can see what's been working for me. And I mean, 100 plus apps, 2 million downloads. What else? A bunch of app companies, right? Like app Jetpack, opt-in mobile, all these different things, right? So if you guys listen, you guys know I'm not full of crap. I don't know everything, but I definitely have some experience with this. So that's the idea: is get past some of this internet marketing BS. Get past, like, it's almost like curated content. Here's what works. Here's what the top publishers are doing. Da 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 da. And that's everything from creating a business account and getting a DUNS number for brand new developers and publishers to understanding what loops are and understanding what the latest gamification techniques are. So long story short, I'm going to try to have a webinar every Wednesday, but the first one is June 25th, and so of course I'm super excited. I wouldn't say I'm nervous. I'm pretty good with webinars. I'm curious to see how many people of the registrants show up. I think we have like 87 registered right now. Yeah, I'd love, and so the June 25th, because it's the first one, there'll be a significant discount. I think it's going to be $700, so instead of $12.99, it'll be $5.99. And the idea is, look, you guys are taking the risk in. It's a brand new thing. There's going to be like 1/3 as many videos as there will be when it's done. It's one of those things, right? So I want to make this a no-brainer. Even if you're not interested in dropping $600 and you'd rather wait and see and give it a couple more months and then drop $1,000, it'd be cool to have you on as a listener. You'll get to see kind of behind the scenes about how I do my business and the things I think about and how the different elements that the things I think about when I'm building an app and building my business and all that kind of stuff. So what is it? appbusinessmba.com is the where you register.
When is the webinar again?
June 25th, and I think it's noon Eastern. Okay. Yeah, so 9 Pacific. It accommodates everyone but Australia, I think, and Thailand and
poor Australians and New Zealand probably, right?
Yeah, I'm my future home country. I'm disregarding them. New Zealand's only like 4 million people, so it's the size of San Diego. So sorry, Kiwis, but I don't know if we're going to do replays or how we're going to do it. This is the first one, and I mean, the website went down yesterday because I was trying to get the payment set up, and so I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. So you'll see when you go to pay, like the payment button is over here, and it's not totally there yet, but functionally it works.
It's not figuring about the registration site.
Yes, exactly.
It's more about the content, right? So
right. And that's what
I'm gonna be looking forward to that. Really exciting, Chris. Hope I can learn something from those how-to videos. We have a question, so I know you have to leave a little early today, but maybe let's take a couple of questions if we can. Bitter Lemon Tech, I think that's Vishal, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, welcome back to the show. He asks our opinion on sign-up page or landing pages for an app, and whether you should do that and when you should do that. And we talked about this a lot, and we also didn't yet follow our own advice, but I'll still give you the answer where we're currently at. And quick disclaimer, I'll be diving into that a little more, doing some more research soon, so maybe my opinion will change a little, but I think it's pretty clear now that that's Chris and I think, that you actually do need a landing page in most cases. That's mainly due to the fact that you are more incentivized now, especially with the coming of iOS 8, to have a strong beta testing phase where a limited number of people are actually testing your app before you release it to the App Store. And there's some obvious benefits to beta testing in general, but I think one of the really interesting ones here is that you'll be able to, if you can collect 100 beta testers or so, and you really take care of them, you really try to address their concerns, I think it's a fair bet that even half of them will leave a review for you when you release the app and you send out an email to your testers and say, thank you, finally we got it done. Here's the version 1. please leave a review if you can, and that can, of course, be very significant for you. And those are all real reviews, so you don't need to worry about that. Chris, what else?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is because video is becoming important on both platforms, and because you can get a head start on both beta and a launch. You know, when you launch and you have 100 people and you say, hey, go download my app, that's 100 people compared to a potential 0. Like, you could release your app and get 2 downloads. Yep. And that first week, that first 2 weeks is super important. And trust me, I've been there where I've had a labor of love show a goose egg. We've all been there. Like, I remember Patrice was working on that story time thing. Remember, and it was like a 9-month thing, and it was like one of these things where it's like, dude, you just got to release it. Like, quit messing around with it. And it got like 0. I don't want to say that. It got like 10. So it's just one of these things where that's why reskinning is popular, because it's like throw crap at the wall and see what sticks, right? Yeah. But if you have, there's things you can do to avoid the goose egg, and that's start marketing early. Now, once you have a landing page, this is a new thing, because 9 months ago I would have said, dude, don't spend your time on a landing page. But because of the move with test flight and beta, and because of videos, and because there's more social signals going into the ranking, I believe, for both Google Play and Apple, I think that having a good home base that you can market to, even if it's just like buying 25-cent likes, not buying, but advertising and hoping that the cost per like is 25 cents. I'm reading a couple books on Facebook ads because I have to advertise the App Business MBA, and I'm thinking, oh man, I could do this for installs, I could do this for likes. Like, there's a lot of different ways to use this. So this is kind of a newer thing. We don't know what role landing page is going to play. I think if search in the App Store continues to be crappy, people will start defaulting to Google search, or even, whatever, any kind of search, but outside of the ecosystem of the stores, and then a landing page becomes more important. So, I mean, David, I could just say what we were talking about, yeah? I mean, who cares? Sure. Okay, so Dave and I and Stefan were talking about, okay, after Macaroon Mania, what are some projects that would really be something that we could get behind and grow? Like, basically the question is, these guys are really sophisticated developers. I'm a guy who can quickly recognize, look, there's a gap in the market here because I looked for it and I don't have it. Videos would be a great example. I'm sure there's going to be a mad rush to inexpensive videos. I keep telling Patrice, dude, get your thing super awesome, because you're going to have a lot of competition. But another thing, another area I noticed was there's tons of landing pages in ThemeForest, and you can go to WordPress and install, and like I have a bunch of WordPress sites, so I know how to do it, but it's not super easy. Like, go buy a URL, redirect the servers to your HostGator account or whatever, and then like it's install WordPress, and then do all these plugins. Like, it's a 10-page SOP for my business to get a new website up. We think there's a real opportunity for, landing pages for app publishers from app publishers. None of these ThemeForest, very beautiful designs, but don't really meet the needs of what we're trying to work with, which is showing reviews, showing videos, and +1s and Google +1s, all these things. So we think that we have a couple ideas, another one being getting involved in notifications, but landing pages, I think, might be our first project we all work on together. Yeah. That's how big of an opportunity we think it is, because we just think it's going to become more and more important.
Right, so this is still in the idea phase. We don't have a service yet or anything like that, but we're going to use landing pages in the apps that we work on together, and we're going to use them mainly to collect emails from an email list and try to get people to test the app and to really like it and to really get some buzz going before we release it to the App Store. So the answer to when you should do it is as early as possible. It's also a validation tool, of course, but the main thing is get some people who would like to use your app and get them the privilege of using it early. They will be happy for you to do that, because early adopters always are. And then you already have your first couple of dozen or 100 customers or whatever it is. So that's basically our advice and what we will be doing for our own apps.
And just because once you start into the world of email collection, it's a whole new world of marketing and stuff. There's something called the Hello Bar. It's free. It's by Kissmetrics, I believe, and you can have a sign up. That's a good question, Jordan. I'll get to that in a second. You can have a sign up, like sign up for the early release, or sign up if you want to be part of the beta or whatever. But having a hello bar at the top, oh, in fact, we have that on the App Business podcast. We have a little green bar at the top. It's free, and it's a really good way to collect emails. So I would check that out. I think it's Hello Bar. And then how do you drive traffic to the landing page? And that's the thing, is if you can't get traffic, is it worth it? Is it worth even doing? So we're still experimenting with this, right? I think there's value in optimizing your page for an app, right? So there's Hunger Games, and then there's Hunger Games Trivia app, and you can optimize for that, and you can see how many people are searching that by doing the Google, analysis, keyword analysis. What is it? Keyword tool thing. I'm not there yet, but I'm probably 30 days from being there, where buying traffic I say buying traffic, but that's a simple way of saying advertising on social media is a good way to drive traffic to your site.
Especially for apps, trivia apps, games, something like that. That seems to be, I mean, mostly for all apps, really. It seems to be a good idea to use social media. Much more than for any other kind of product, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, talking about it being hard to get traffic, I think that's where the idea comes in to provide a service for these kind of landing pages, because it would take away the friction, right? We want to make it as easy as possible. So what we'll do, we don't just do one app, we'll do a series of apps. So we can just develop one template, which is really nicely done and optimized for SEO and all that kind of stuff. So we hopefully will get some traffic on that. And then we can, then the cost isn't that big, because we can split it over all these apps that we're going to do. Right. So that's one way to think about it.
David, another one is if you have an app video, then YouTube also has tons of searches, right? So Jordan, you're a guy with an app or I say an app, but you have several apps, but one that's killing it, right? And or a handful that are killing it, and you're like probably the same as me, where you have 1 million downloads, 2 million downloads, and you probably never built a landing page, which I have landing pages, but I don't think they've driven much traffic to my apps. But I think that's changing, and I think that's where David and I are focusing is okay, we think we want a landing page because of the SEO benefits and getting traffic from alternative means than the stores. How do we, is the method SEO traffic and YouTube links and Facebook likes? And if that's the method, then that's the method. But we're still kind of figuring it out. I know that's obviously a critical piece that we're missing. So yeah, we're not trying to say, oh yeah, definitely do a landing page and it's all going to work out. But for our businesses, we're building landing pages for all the reasons we said, and we think we can figure out how to drive traffic. But we'll have to see, and again, we'll share all this stuff, and we hope you guys share too. And I'm actually curious, Jordan, if you have a landing page for Stickman. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I just started revamping BGB Island, and I'm already revamping and I'm already over it. Part of it is I'm over my apps. I'm excited for new apps, and I'm bored of my existing apps. I just want to sell them. So part of it's that, but David and I, with the economics game apps, that could support a whole new landing page and a whole new portfolio page with landing pages for each individual app and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's more like, your Stickman has been around for a while, so maybe it's just something like, okay, that wasn't an app that deserved a landing page. I don't want to be rude, but it's like maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But some of my quizzes, it's like, they don't need a landing page. They'll be fine. Although I've got one for them. for the bigger apps or apps that we are, take more than just building apps and reskinning them, which is what I did with the quizzes. I built my own code and then reskinned it 20 times, right? For the economics game, that's a bigger app, and we think it's going to have a long life, and it's worth a landing page, and that's kind of how I think we approach.
Well,
like, I don't know what Vishal's doing, but if it's a bigger app, then I think for sure a landing page.
Yeah, here's how I think about it. They're really just two business models that I would consider for apps, and one is to get behind something that can scale, something that is a proven market fit and a proven need in the market there, et cetera, but also has the ability to be based on one core code piece and then spread out over a series of apps. If you use that business model, then I think a landing page is pretty obvious to do, because you only need to do it once and then it's basically copy-paste. And then there's the other business model where you have some really serious service or really serious app where you put all your weight behind that one app and make it really awesome. Well, then there's, I think, an even more justified need for a landing page, because you absolutely need to. It's critical that you connect with your users early on, so you don't develop something that the market doesn't really want. So you absolutely develop something that your users will want to pay for. So anything between that, I think, is just a bad business model. But also anything between that is where you might not need a landing page. So that's why I would really suggest having a landing page. Again, there's going to be more about that. Let's quickly go to another question. And then
I like that it's a one-sentence question and we do 10 minutes on it. And we'll continue to share our thoughts on this, because it is something that's kind of new and a departure from what even I was thinking about a while ago. But
we're going to keep you up to date how it's going as well. So
I'm curious, real quick, David, Kevin, if you don't mind sharing, I know you're in the Facebook group too, if you have any resources for learning how to do Facebook ads. I bought a couple Kindle books, and I joined like a $500 Facebook Advantage or Facebook Ad Advantage or something, which has been really good for like bigger products. But for like just testing out apps and driving traffic, you don't want to be paying $7 per lead, I'd love to hear any resources you have for learning how to acquire Facebook likes or other ways to drive traffic through Facebook.
Okay, quickly, Vishal asked if we knew any companies for creating good videos. Well, we know Aptamin, and they make pretty gorgeous videos. So if you check out their site, aptamin.com, they have a couple of showcases there. That's really great, but it's also really high-end, I guess. So I don't know if there's anything I've seen in production yet where it's a little bit more affordable or just cheaper for maybe more suited for maybe a series of apps like we're doing. I haven't seen anything yet, and so that's something that we'll have to tackle as well. So we have some thoughts on that, how you could automate it or what you could do about it, but I think we can't really answer that yet. We're still figuring it out. So
yeah, part of David's reservation is Patrice has something called App Dev Machine or Android Video Machine or something, and the problem with some of those services is it's so new. I think David's uncomfortable with recommending them because we haven't seen them in action yet, and I think he just more and more we're getting to the point where, look, we really need to be responsible for the services we're recommending, instead of it just being, hey, our buddy's got a new service, let's get him on the show. And so I think that's part of the reservation, is we haven't seen especially for iOS, but for even Android, we haven't seen the service executed all the way. And so it's just something we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, Ryan says that on iOS you don't really need an app video until iOS 8. While that's technically true, if you're executing now and you're releasing an app now, I would worry about that now, because iOS 8 is coming, and when it is out there, you need a video. So you don't want to be late with that.
Yeah, we're definitely talking about for iOS 8, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, sure.
in fact, Ryan might know some video resources, but I have a feeling in the next 2 months, everyone is going to pop up with video resources. You know, Angela's app service, the one that kind of does the reskinning with
Yeah.
Carter's stuff, she's going to have something. I mean,
Well, but
uh,
that's kind of the point is
uh,
that this is also new because iOS 8 isn't here yet. That Abdomen is the only real service that has been there for a long time that I
yeah,
know of. So it's the
yeah.
only one where we can talk about qualified regarding their quality, right? So
And if
um,
David, if the Macaroon Mania or these other games that we're thinking of, if we're starting to make $1.50 per download, you know, real games do, not the 10, 15, 20 cents, but you know, real money, and we recognize, hey, having a video, really professionally done video, could drive that many more downloads over the next year. $1,000 is a bargain. You know, that's not a lot of money for a real marketing video, right? But clearly, you want to wait and see how the market responds. Unless you have a big budget and you have a lot of experience and you're ready to do it. But this is a bigger app for David and I, and so you know we're just kind of figuring it out. We won't spend $1,000 right from the get-go. Um, uh, I'd love to pick Kevin's brain. Kevin and I got a lot to talk about because Reflector is something that I've looked at a lot. I'm recognizing that people who are listening to this and aren't seeing the chat probably are missing half the conversation. But uh, Kevin recommends App Motion and Reflector. I'm not familiar with Apple Motion and Reflector. I'm not familiar with Apple Motion, but Reflector I've evaluated several times. I thought that was abandoned. I thought that was an abandoned project, but
well,
maybe not.
I use reflectors, so
Oh, you do, and that's how you record your iPhone or iPad,
screencasts, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Good. Good.
Well, the point is, Reflector is really just the raw recording. So I wouldn't, just like we don't put screenshots in the screenshots anymore, we will soon not only put screencasts as videos in, right? We'll be able
Yeah.
to, or we'll be forced to by marketing uh,
Yeah,
to
but you have
actually do
content to
some.
edit though. You'll have like you can edit on top of the screencast, right?
Yeah, but I
I'm
think
more
it's gonna be
excited
like
for.
it's gonna be more like the screenshots where the screenshots are only part of the video.
Yeah,
Um,
right. I'm more excited because I was looking for something for App Business MBA. So my mind's already off on something else.
yeah,
But
well, that's great, I think.
yeah,
And Ryan just shared X Mirage, which also sounds pretty cool. Actually, looks pretty good. So check that out as well. Maybe we can have it in the show notes once we release this on the podcast. Okay. Good. Chris, you said you were a little short on time today. Do you want
yeah.
to end it now? And we can take questions next week?
Or we can do one more call for questions. I mean, my big thing is I'm trying to get to, dude, I'm addicted to these questions. I love this
It's
interaction.
awesome,
And
right? Yeah.
we said this last week, we're going to figure out a way where we can all talk because it just feels weird where we're just answering questions. I mean, it's fine, but it'd be nicer if someone could, like, if Jordan could say, hey, I have this question. Like, Jordan's been on the last 3 weeks, and it's still just typing, and it'd be nice to talk to the stick man in person. Okay, yeah, so any more questions? Ryan, thanks, dude. Xmirage and ScreenFlow has worked for me. So we've got, and I'm using ScreenFlow. I think that's what it's called. ScreenFlow is
Yep.
a very popular Apple recording. It's like Camtasia, but for Apple or for Mac. Okay, then, yeah, guys. That was good, 45 minutes. Oh, and something worth mentioning. Next week, there's some good episodes. This thing is going to air tomorrow, Saturday. That's what we're going to try to do every week. Monday is Dave Baggett, which was an awesome interview, I thought. And Wednesday is, gosh, do you remember, David? Oh, Wednesday is our Amazon Fire conversation.
Yep.
And then Thursday is with Oriole, and I would call that a can't miss because he presents some different perspective on incentivized ads from a guy who built a very successful app, one of the most popular apps of 2013, and had to pivot the way he implemented his grand vision completely because Apple changed the way they enforce their regulations, or guidelines. So he's a guy who's been on the wrong end of it before, and now he's built something that is super like safe, the safest possible interpretation of the guidelines. But his perspective was different than Vungle's. And just to recap, Vungle essentially said, "Hey, look, this looks like a test. Everyone's approved now." And I firsthand experience of that. I had an app that was approved that had all sorts of incentivized social share and incentivized videos. His perspective is different, and I thought, oh man, we're going to have this guy on, and I'm going to disagree with him, and it's going to be awkward. And it wasn't. He provided some wonderful insight. So I would say Thursday, definitely listen to that one, because it could shape the next year of how you monetize your apps. So it's something that David and I will be watching. We thought we were off the hook. We thought, oh, it's a test. Okay, move on with life. And now it's like, we should really think about
pay attention.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, and then I think that's it. We've still got some good guests in the can that are waiting, or they're going to tell us when to release it because they've got some products coming out. But yeah, and then there's been decent conversation in the Facebook group. So if you're not involved in the Facebook group, go join that.
Missing out. Yeah.
It's a closed group, like I said before, so it's not like it's just come in and everything's public. So everything will be private in that group if you want to share stuff. And then if we find any spammers or whatever, we'll just kick them out. But that has been zero problem so far. Everyone's just really open to helping each other out and everything, so it's been really great. Yeah, so I think that's it. And then you'll hear the ads in the other podcasts, but if you haven't checked it out yet, June 25th, next Wednesday, I'm doing the webinar, 9 Pacific, noon Eastern. Should be an hour, should be fun. Come check it out at businessmba.com. I think that's it, David, yeah?
Yep.
All right, guys, no more questions.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time.